Hello, amazing Londale parents and families. I want to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Marisol Perez, and I'm the language arts specialist at Billy Mitchell Elementary. And I'm so excited to just be here and share an abbreviated version of what went on at our first workshop series. In conjunction with Family U, of empowering families through literacy and engaging families as partners. Our first workshop focused all around oral storytelling, and it was an interactive workshop. So there's some slides on here that are pertaining to strategies and activities that we did together, but I'll briefly walk you through them just so that you have an idea of what went on during the workshop. And I hope that I encourage you that you come and join us for the next one so that you can get the full experience as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's workshop focuses around the power of oral storytelling to promote conversations at home. As our guests entered in, they went ahead and registered. We had raffles throughout the day, and that was one way that you could enter the raffle. And we also had coffee and pastries for you to grab and mingle as we got started. Our objectives that we had for the workshop was getting to know each other through an activity, as well as getting to know the district's instructional focus and how that works in tandem with what we do at home. Then we went on to exploring what oral storytelling is and what oral language development it looks like and why it's so important. Another word you might hear it being called is oracy. So really developing oral language skills, speaking and listening skills, and how that applies to what students are doing in school. And then we ended our time together by trying out 2 activities that can promote oral language development at home and communication engagement with your children. This is our Lawndale Elementary School District's instructional focus. So the instructional focus is seen across the district at every school site for every program. So if you're in the DI program, you'll see the instructional focus embedded into our students' learning and instructional time in the area, in all areas, but with using the target language as their anchor. If our students are in the passages programs that are specialized to meet diverse needs, you might see the instructional focus in a different way. So how they might use communication to engage with their teachers or their peers or to request items or wants. So we as a group read the instructional focus, which I will go ahead and read to you. And then we did an activity, kind of just breaking apart the instructional focus and what that means or might look like for us as parents and families at home. So the instructional focus that we are anchored in here at Lawndale is to have purposeful questions and academic discourse that deepens student understandings and critical thinking. I know that's a lot to take in, so that was the reason why we kind of broke it apart and really dove into what that might look like and what that means for us as families and parents at home. We did an activity together called Think, Write, Share. During this activity, participants were asked to think of a word or phrase of the instructional focus that stood out to them and how that word or phrase might look like at home for them. And then they went ahead and took some time, about 2 minutes, to write down their thinking, and then they shared with a partner. We also did an overall group share where we got a lot of input from families talking about their experiences. So I'm going to model what that looked like. And this was directly from another parent. So they had little templates at their tables, and they took some time to kind of break this thinking down. And so they jotted down their thinking. And so one of the thinkings that stood out to them was the phrase purposeful questions. They thought about what that might look like at home. What does that look like in general? For teachers, we know that purposeful questions revolves around the content of instruction. But what does that look like for us as parents or as grandparents or uncles or aunts or caregivers? And so one parent shared that they'd like to be more intentional about the questions that they ask their kids. So oftentimes sometimes we have the habit of when we go pick up our kiddos from school or childcare, or pretty much anywhere we might go, how was your day? And we usually, for the most part, depending on the age and depending on the child, but for the most part, even the chattiest child might say, it was okay. And that's it. That's where the conversation ends. So this parent was saying, well, one parent mentioned how they have already tried this approach and how it's changed the communication that they've had in at home. Instead of asking, how was your day? They might ask questions about how they're feeling or how they were feeling at school or their favorite part of their day and why. And so that opens opportunities and doors for further conversations, further questions, and further responses. We then jumped into what is oral storytelling, and oral language development and why. So here are two big reasons as to why it's so important. One of the reasons is that it builds foundations in literacy. We know that oral storytelling and oral language development promotes active listening skills. I give an example of my daughter. Sometimes I tend to talk a lot. And so I might be talking to her about something that I think is interesting, but she's like not paying attention to me, not actively listening. She might be thinking about something else in Roblox land or something. And so having more consistent and more conversations that are engaging to the child promotes active listening skills, and that then transfers into the classroom, right? When they're having to really hone in on a specific content area, they have to actively listen so that they could process the information that's being taught to them. Also, it develops vocabulary. You might be using specific vocabulary when you're cooking. Maybe you're talking about fractions, like, oh, I need a quarter cup of flour to make these tortillas, and I need 2 cups of water. So that vocabulary is transferring as well, and it builds their vocabulary, builds meaning across multiple contexts. It also supports with reading comprehension. We know, and we've research shows that the way we learn how to read is really through sound first, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And it promotes increased writing skills. Beyond just the literacy component, though, it supports self-identity. When our child or children have the opportunity to engage in conversations at home where they're the safest, where we could promote opportunities for errors and fixing those errors, which we hope to do at school as well. But it develops their confidence in the classroom, and it develops their confidence in the real world. It allows them to feel empowered as individuals, to be able to speak up for themselves and for others, and be advocates for their learning and be advocates for their society. In which case, that promotes happiness and overall well-being in the child into adulthood. Some of the benefits that we reap when practicing oral language development and oral storytelling are, as we mentioned, that social emotional benefit of giving students the ability to express their thoughts and express what they're feeling, and also being mindful and being cognizant of those feelings and saying, I'm feeling this way because, and then trying to figure out how they might be able to control those emotions and feelings and control the outcome of those feelings, or at least process what happened. It also builds self-confidence, resilience, and empathy. When we get to know other people and their stories, we empathize with them. We can make connections with them and understand where they are coming from, because we too might have similar experiences. And that's the beautiful part of being here in Lawndale. We're so diverse, but we also have such great connections. And so I think that's really important to highlight. Another benefit is the cognitive benefits. In order to have the multiple exchanges and conversations, it requires focus and it requires concentration. We need to make sure that our students are able to adapt to, depending on the audience, adapt to and the topic, adapt their focus and their concentration to very specific tasks. It allows them to move more easily through cross-content connections. So as I mentioned earlier with my cooking analogy, we might be making up a recipe on how to make, homemade flour tortillas or how to cook pancit at home. but they're learning measurement and data, and math and science and all of that wonderful stuff in your kitchen, and then bringing that knowledge set to the classroom. It builds creativity, and it also builds critical thinking skills. One other benefit that I think is very important is that it's accessible to everyone, regardless of your method of communication, regardless of your age, your ability, your reading level. Most, if not all, people can access oral conversations. And that's so key, because I'll give you an example. My kiddo, he's here with us at Mitchell. He is in our Pathways program, formerly our autism program. And I narrate everything. He's pre-verbal. He's learning how to speak and express himself, communicate expressively. And I narrate everything. First, we do this, then we do that, and then finally we go, right? So first we put on our clothes and shoes, and then, we grab our backpack, and then we go. Those conversations, those narrations, even though it might not be a multiple exchange like we're talking about with our neurotypically developing kiddos, me providing that input is allowing him to understand and make meaning to what he's hearing and what is occurring. So it's an entry point for our students. It's an entry point for everybody. And lastly, the academic benefits that we talked about, the strong readers and strong writers. It supports academic success in all areas. Reading starts with oral language. Reading starts with what we listen, what we hear. And I think that it's so important for us to understand that even though we might not be strong readers ourselves, we can still develop strong readers at home by giving them access and speaking to them, because they start to hear these words and make meaning of those words. They start to hear sounds even at birth. That's how we start to learn how to talk. It does not start with print concepts. It starts with what we hear. So those are some of the benefits that come with oral language development and oral storytelling. We had the opportunity as a group to try some of these activities out. I'm going to share 2 with you that we did, and all of these resources will be available for you. I'll go over the resources page in a moment, but I did want to show you what we did here as a group in person. The first one was called a roll and tell activity. And this was just a conversation-based activity where every person received a template, a dry erase marker, and a dice. And they worked as a team to have conversations around specific topics depending on the number that they rolled. So I'll give you a quick overview since I have an electronic dice here. So they saw something like this. Everyone had one of these printed out in a sleeve. And so they had their own dice. And let's say we threw a dice and we get the number 6. So I'm going to go over to my 6 column. And I think I'm going to talk about, let's see, your favorite food and why. Well, my favorite food is beans. Really any kind of beans, but black beans with a little bit of cheese specifically reminds me so much of my grandma, and just like all the yummy warmth that came out of it. And so that's the reason why I love beans so much. So now that I answered that prompt, I'm going to go ahead and cross it, because if I get 6 again, which I don't know, let's see if I'll get 6 again. No, I got 4. But if I did get 6 again, I would just go to one of the other 2 prompts. So we took turns kind of highlighting that activity and practicing it together. The other activity was more of an oral storytelling activity. So we got to talk with our partner and describe the house we grew up in. Here, something that we highlighted was that the house that we grew up in may not have been the house that we were physically living in. It could have very well been a house that we just spent a lot of time, or a place that we just spent a lot of time in, right? Maybe it was not even a house. Maybe it was a restaurant. Maybe your parents worked at a restaurant or owned a restaurant and you spent a lot of time there. But the purpose behind this activity was just to be descriptive, to provide as much details as possible about a specific place that was very, very well ingrained in your mind. And so we also had questions that could support that multiple exchanges of information, as well as providing the opportunity for the person telling the story to get even more detailed about what place they grew up in or the house they grew up in. So groups had opportunities to talk with partners and kind of develop those oral storytelling techniques. Once we were done with those activities, we jumped right into the resources and raffles. And I'm going to share the resource with you so that you can get access as well. These are available in English and Spanish. I will share the English one with you. So parents were given a bookmark with a QR code, and the QR code had both the Spanish and the English resources. So here you see the English resources has 8 read alouds with recipes. So you can tell I'm a little bit of a foodie when it comes to learning and different modalities. I like to cook. And so I enjoy cooking with my kiddos. And I think that it's really great to make the connections to literacy in such a fun way. So these 8 books have recipes inside them. So if you click on the book itself, it takes you to a YouTube read aloud where you can listen to the book. If you don't have the opportunity to purchase it or check it out from your local library, it's accessible for you here. And then you could try the recipe at home and ask your child questions about the experience and the food itself. So that's one great way to connect with your kiddos. And even our older middle school kids, trust me, they love to be read to. As much as they might act like they don't, they will. So these are still great books for middle school, and it's still great because they could do the recipe pretty much themselves with some support. And I think that would be a great opportunity for them. It also has other activities that promote storytelling along with the printable links. So for example, these are storytelling cards where there's different characters, settings and problems, and you kind of just pick out of like a deck of cards and create stories through there. We also have question jars, 50 questions to ask your kids instead of asking how was your day, and doing that as like a family time activity. And just some other activities along with the links provided there for you. So that was pretty much what was covered in this workshop. And we do plan to have another one as part of this series on November 16th at 8:45 a.m. here at Billy Mitchell Elementary. Doors open at 8:30, so you're more than welcome to come by a little earlier. But if you have any questions before then or would like more additional resources and additional support, my doors are always open. You can always email me at my lawndalesd.net email. It's my first name _ last name. And I really do hope to meet you soon and hope you can join us in person next time. You have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time.